Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's event. My name is Rob Fryer. I'm part of the recruitment and marketing team here at Now Teach. And behind the scenes, we've got the wonderful Joe, who's operating our tech, and then Rachel and Wendy on hand to answer your questions in the Q&A box that I'll describe to you in a few moments' time. I'm really pleased to be here this evening, but especially pleased that we're joined by Lucy Kellaway, Now Teach co-founder and economics teacher, who will be sharing her experiences this evening. So a big thanks to Lucy, especially as she's struggling with a bit of a croaky voice this evening. So thank you, Lucy, and look forward to hearing from you a little later. With regards to tonight's event, we appreciate you're likely to be at various stages of your career change journey. You might just be starting to think about teaching, or you might be getting ready for a September start. Whatever stage you're at, I hope we can answer all the questions that you might have this evening. Before we go any further, we'd love to know a little bit more about you and what stage you're at in your career journey. So please, could you complete the poll that will pop up in your screen in a few seconds' time? That's wonderful. Thank you. We'll have a look at your responses behind the scenes and we'll help to shape some of our questions and some of our answers to tailor for where you are in your career change journey, the subjects and the specialisms that you're interested in. So we appreciate you may wonder if you really want to join a further organisation when you potentially have a school, a training provider to manage. You're going up in the lofts, not only to get your Christmas decorations, but also to find your GCSE certificates. You're working through budgets. You're trying to pick your way through a whole host of different materials and certificates and financial plans and bursary information and a whole host of different and complex processes that you need to go through. So why would you want to join an organisation like Now Teach? The plain and simple answer from my perspective is that Now Teach is not more work. It is not more requirements. Plain and simple, it's about more support, it's about more comradeship, and it's about a network of other people going on a similar journey and the support of the wonderful team that we have here at Now Teach, who have supported thousands of people like you to change career into secondary school teaching. We hope to have a unique insight into what the background and the landscape's like, how training providers operate, and how best to navigate their processes. And once you're in training, really make the most of the time that you have there to become the teacher that you would love to be. So plain and simply, it's about more support, and we will talk about that today. To make sure that we can answer all your burning questions, you will see a Q&A tab. So to avoid any confusion, the box is labeled Q&A, not the chat tab, and the team will be on hand to answer your queries in that Q&A tab. We'll answer some of them in the questions there in the text, so please feel free to post as we go through the webinar. Some of them we might well take, Lucy or myself might well talk to as we go through. We'll probably take out some of the more prominent, more popular themes and start to dive into that a little bit more. But the Q&A box is up, and I really encourage you to use it, ask your questions, and we'll do our best to answer it. The purpose of tonight's event is to share something about what it's like to change career to teaching and how Now Teach can help you make that happen. We'll talk about the support that you're offered during your training, and after your training, about joining the network of hundreds of career changers as you progress into your career. At Now Teach, we passionately believe we want to see a world where children benefit because talented people who've already had successful careers become teachers and bring their skills and experience to the schools that need them the most. I'm personally, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier, very fortunate that my eldest now at secondary school has a career changer as one of her teachers. And it's wonderful to hear her coming in and talking about the experiences that individual has brought to the subject and really ignited her passion in that subject. So hopefully in the not too distant future, you'll be joining those ranks and children across the country will really benefit from the power of career changes. We won't cover every aspect of this tonight, but we will have until 7 p.m. to tackle the key bits and delve a little bit deeper into Now Teach. Before we begin, I'd like you to hear from some of our Now teachers about their experience of career changing in this short film.
Even the teachers in the staff room are curious as to why someone at my stage of life have actually changed into teaching. And what I love about Now Teach is that we don't need to question each other's purpose for becoming the teachers.
And so having the support of Now Teach, which is an organisation which is made up of people like me, has been really, really helpful through my training year and beyond. And I think will be part of it, of my future career.
The most important thing really is you're just not alone. You have that network of like-minded people that make you feel that you made the right decision, really.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Joe. That footage was taken at our annual summit a couple of years back. And I was just interested. I was speaking with Charles the other week. He's our Spanish teacher. He used to work in marketing in the football industry and has done some amazing things. And how he laces that experience into his Spanish lessons is wonderful to hear. Anyway, without further ado, this leads us really nicely onto Lucy and Lucy's career change journey. So I'd love to pass over to Lucy, offer her a warm welcome, and invite her to come off mute and start to share some of her experience of changing career, training to teaching, and becoming a teacher. So Lucy, welcome.
Thanks a lot, Rob. So apologies for the slightly sexy voice. So yes, I was just thinking back to 2017, which was the year we founded Now Teach. I was probably roughly where you are now. I was doing a job, I've been doing it all my life. I was a journalist, a columnist on the FT. It had been an incredibly enjoyable career, but I found myself just thinking, is this all there is? I wasn't learning anything. I was a little bit burnt out. I was nowhere near ready to retire. And I was wondering what on earth to do with myself, frankly. I didn't have to look very far in that my mum was a school teacher. And more important, my daughter was a teacher too. And she was reporting from the front line that there weren't nearly enough teachers out there. Sorry. And so I thought, what about me? What about us? I was really certain that there was this whole slice of older people who had loved doing one thing and wanted to change and reinvent themselves doing something else. And I thought, let's go for it. Let's do it. It was a bit of you could say there was a lot of hubris there. I had no idea what being a teacher was like, but I thought, come on, let's get other people to come and join us too. So fast forward, 8, 9 even years later, we've had 1,300 Now teachers through the network, and I was one of the first. So I wanted just to talk to you a little bit about what it was like and what you can expect. So first thing, it's hard. There's no getting around that. It's hard. And actually, at times it's brutal. Let's get over that too. And when I say that is because you guys are used to being good at something. You won't be good at the beginning. You will be really not so good. But the flip side of that is that you will get better. And isn't that amazing and exciting? You know, as a journalist, I stopped getting better 15 years before I quit. But as a teacher, suddenly I was, at the beginning of the learning curve and was improving all the time. And that is a really, really exciting thing. But more than that, if people say, oh, don't you miss journalism? Don't you? And I always said no, because I was done. But if I think of the real difference, is that in most office-based jobs, if you're really honest at the end of the day, what have you actually done? What have you really, if you meetings, this, that, and the other? But every single day as a teacher, you feel that you have taught some children some things they did not know at the beginning of the day. And that is an amazing feeling. It just really, really is. I mean, I don't necessarily buy into the, ooh, teachers change lives. I think that's a bit too, I don't know, I think that's a bit too self-aggrandizing, but teachers are jolly well doing something really worthwhile, and they're doing that every single day, and that is so amazing. So, it's been rough. It was rough at the beginning, and then you get to the point where you get more and more and more confident. Um, and so what if I had to single out, apart from that feeling of purpose from teaching kids things they didn't know, there are two other totally brilliant things about it. One is that you spend your days surrounded not by bored colleagues, but by teenagers. They're at the beginning of their lives. The optimism of that is just unbelievable. The other thing that you must ask, so actually ask yourself, do you like teenagers? If you don't, you can leave this call right now, and we're happy you thought about it. But if you don't like teenagers, nah, not for you. The other brilliant thing is about your subject. You get to spend all day thinking about your subject. Now, I started training as a maths teacher, which wasn't really right for me. Actually, my maths wasn't good enough, is the truth, but it wasn't what I really loved. And then I switched to economics, which I have a degree in and which I adore. And I taught it with such enthusiasm. And also because I'd been out in the real world for decades, I could pepper what I was teaching with real examples. And that's very, very precious too. But so there was all of that. But just thinking back again to those early days, I said it was hard. It is hard. So you have to feel that you're up for that. You're up for a bit of humbling at the beginning. But it becomes tolerable thanks to the support of Now Teach. And so so I was both founder of Now Teach, but as soon as I started teaching, I was just a teacher the same as everyone else. And what was so amazing in that first year, there were only 45 of us, but my God, we lent on each other. And I'm still on about 6 Now Teach WhatsApp message groups. We share experiences, we share resources, and we're totally there for each other. Now, I seem to be fading completely, so I'm going to stop talking, but I'll come back for questions.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Lucy. Thank you so much for persevering. I've been taking the opportunity to look through some of our top tips bank. So we've gone out to our Now Teach network and asked some, what would they share on a webinar. So for those of you that are particularly interested in Now Teach, we run these webinars on a regular basis, and we'll have some further ones coming up. But these are from previous webinars. So I just thought I'd share these for you. And then maybe we'll work through the slides. But Andy's used to work in FMCG. He calls himself the cheese man, sold lots of cheese up and down the country. Really got inspired by teaching after his children started to play rugby. Their rugby coach dropped out, and he really enjoyed being with children, helping teenagers, coaching them, and loved seeing them get better. And he's now in the classroom teaching economics. So his advice is to be comfortable, or to get comfortable with feeling vulnerable. But when you're alone in the classroom, there are other people up and down the country that are feeling exactly the same. So you're not alone, but embrace that, embrace young people, and enjoy being in that situation. We've got Jess, who's a teacher in Cambridge. She used to work for the NHS. She's now gone in, and she's actually a biology teacher, doing some fascinating work. And she talks about how every 3 months she would have a performance review. Every day she feels that she's got a thank you, which is the same as a performance review for her. Someone says, "Thank you, miss," and that for her is incredibly rewarding. So her top tip is to really continue through your journey thinking about why you're doing it and what you can bring to it. And then lastly, this is from Lisa. Lisa used to work in professional services. She's actually a maths teacher. And she she feels that her top tip is to lean on your career. Your super skill is your experience, your knowledge, and you can bring that to the classroom. So leverage your experience, apply it in a different context, and it'll make you feel young again. So hopefully that brings a bit of flavour to proceedings this evening. So let's move on. Let me give you a little bit of advice and guidance on how you can become a teacher, and then we'll come back to Lucy with a few questions, and I'm sure I can answer a few. So please do keep them coming through in the Q&A box. So how do I become a teacher with Now Teach? So first, let's give you a quick overview of the support that we can offer you into teaching at Now Teach. So number one, and just to be very clear, we don't run a teacher training program. We support career changers as they transition into teaching and through their teacher training, and then they remain part of the Now Teach network throughout their entire career as a teacher. We do this in three ways. Number one is our recruitment team can support you with your initial teacher training application, whether that is advising on the DfE Apply service or helping you to secure interviews through our partners or coaching you through the interview process itself. We've got the wonderful Jo, Wendy, Rachel and Aisha, who, as I explained at the beginning of the presentation, have supported thousands of people make that transition into teaching. They've got lots of support and advice and guidance that they can provide. Jo's had about 14 different sessions this week with people looking through their personal statements. I know Wendy's been doing some interview coaching, and Aisha's been working through some of the application processes with her candidates. It is a complex and it is a difficult landscape to navigate. Certainly if you haven't been through what is more of, I suppose, typical of a graduate process in previous years, but we've got the experience and support that we can provide to help you through that. Then, as Lucy alluded to, in the classroom, the first 2 years of your teacher training before you're qualified can be really challenging, and I don't think we would like to, I suppose, shield you from that. It is tough, it is difficult, but it's incredibly rewarding, as hopefully some of those examples just showed. So we'll offer support by our program managers who will keep you up to date with a whole host of different tips and different advice and guidance throughout your journey through teacher training and into your first years as an early careers teacher. And then, just as important, if not more so, as you become part of a Now Teach network of hundreds of career changers that are there to share learning, to share experiences as you train and through the rest of your career as a teacher. As Lucy mentioned, she's on 6 WhatsApp groups, and we have a whole platform called Mighty Networks. Speaking with, I think, Lisa, I mentioned earlier, if ever you need a lesson plan, or if ever you need some support, or if you have a question, those WhatsApp groups and Mighty Networks, there's hundreds of people there that have got something similar to share and to speak to you about. So it's a wonderful resource. It's that's discrete third space of insight, knowledge, and resources that you can tap into. So now teachers say this is one of the best aspects of what we do. It's a community of people who are doing something similar to you and are there to support each other as they go through in our wonderful community. So if you haven't already, I'd recommend you submit an expression of interest via our website. It's a very short form, but it will give you access to our career change advisors who will help to describe to you what Now Teach can do and giving you the full picture of how to join the network and the advice that we can provide to support. If we think you're right for Now Teach and you feel that we'll be able to support you, we'll offer you to join the network, and then we'll help you with securing your training place and on to the start of your teacher training yourself. So what are the different training routes? This is a common question, and hopefully we're simplifying it as much as possible on these slides. At a very basic level, there are 2 main types of training program. There's university-based or schools-based. With university-based, you begin in a university and then spend time in a school. Arguably slightly more theoretical to start with, then laced with some of the practical experience. With a school-based route, you will be based in a school and you will learn on the job from day one, and the theoretical the qualifications will come in and around that. There's no right way of doing it. It's personal to you, and we can help work through which is the best route for you to choose depending on your preferences and your personal circumstances. There are 2 qualifications that are associated with teacher training. The first is the QTS, the Qualified Teacher Status. This is the qualification that you require to teach in a school in England. And that's the key thing to obtain to be able to teach. The PGCE is an academic qualification. So you'll get this from your university-based route, and you can also do it occasionally on the school-based route. But the important thing is here, it's not necessarily compulsory. You can still teach, but people do see the benefit in doing it. And again, we can take you through the pros and cons and how that might suit your personal circumstances and your ambitions in the classroom. So am I eligible to teach? There are legal criteria that is set out for teacher training by the government. The basic criteria that you would need to meet is a GCSE in maths and English. In old money, certainly in my money, is C, or you would now describe it as 4 in terms of how that equates to the modern equivalent. You would need to have that above or an equivalent of, and an undergraduate degree. The subject criteria tends to vary, tends to be an honours degree, an A-level, or experience in your subject. Now that can change depending on your training provider, but basically that's broadly speaking to have had or need to have obtained to be able to get onto a teacher training course. If you have any overseas qualifications, there is a body called ENIC who can provide a statement of comparability. So they will check for your overseas qualifications and see how they match up. At this point, I'd like to add a quick note on subjects. The news, there's a shortage of teachers, in particularly in some really high profile and very much needed subjects. So maths, physics, chemistry, modern foreign languages, and computer science. There are often more training options in these subjects, so you get more choice of where you train, and also potentially a higher government bursary. But I think it's fair to say that there's a large teacher shortage right across the piece, but it's more traditionally the STEM subjects that have a higher bursary and are seen as more of a shortage. So our team will discuss with you the subjects to make sure it's the right choice for you based on your experience, based on your interests, and based on your qualifications. That's what we're here to do. We can help you find the right choice for you. Finances. So changing career will mean a change of income for many. And I know many of you will be thinking about this right now, especially given the economic context that we're all working through. There are tax-free government bursaries available. These do vary. And the higher bursaries are, of course, for the shortage subjects, which is up to 29k. You can see that on your screen. And there are also scholarships available for chemistry, computing, and physics. We keep up to date with the financial support that's available, and we'll be able to advise on bursaries and scholarships as you come through the process. So all trainees will pay tuition fees for their training year, whether on a university or school-based route. Student loans are available, and tuition fees this year went up to 9,535. So it's the equivalent of an undergraduate degree a year at university in terms of your fees. There are also maintenance loans that are available for living costs depending on your household income. So there are opportunities and there are options to work through and best finance your teacher training. Once you gain your QTS, you can enter the teacher salary scale. As a newly qualified teacher, you'll begin with a salary of at least 31k outside London, or in inner London around 33. Lots of musings and lots of notioning towards potential further salary increases for teachers over the next few years. Again, worth keeping your eye on. Now we're going to start to come to some of your questions. So I'm going to dip into the Q&A box. If Lucy's voice has managed to come back a little bit, we'll invite you back in, Lucy, and maybe I'll send one your way and then address one myself, and we can try and nurse your voice through as much as possible. Maybe if we start with just thinking back to your beginning, actually, when you went into the classroom, A really interesting question there around how you started to develop your confidence as a teacher. How did you start on that journey?
Well, I mean, the first lesson is the rudest shock. You're live in front of 30, in my case, year eights, who may not be viewing you with that much sympathy. Um, but it's your first burst of confidence is at the end of that hour or however long the lessons are. You've simply emerged to the other side. You are alive. Nothing terrible happened. And you kind of, even though my mentor told me all the millions of things I'd got wrong, I thought, right, I've done it. I've stood in front of them for an hour. I vaguely, even though I did it horribly badly, I am still there. So that little bit of confidence, you think, okay, I am going to be able to do this when I've solved. I think she told me I had 32 things I needed to change or improve in that first lesson alone. But and then you work on them very slowly. But it's like learning most things. It's not that you start from no confidence and then slowly, slowly, slowly you get to loads. What happens is it's up and down and up and down and up and down. You sort of think, oh, I've cracked this now. I can really do it after 1 week. And then you give some terrible lessons. I think the real danger is at the beginning, you feel that you are only as good as your last lesson, which means it's a bit of a roller coaster. But, definitely by the end of that first training year, you are in a different place altogether to when you started. You can sort of do it, but you need to go on improving, which is good.
Thank you, Lucy. Rest your voice a little bit. I've got a lovely question that I'd like to bring you back in a few moments, but I'll take a couple if I may. Some really interesting question about how do you know if you like teaching and what makes a good teacher? I think the advice that we would give to candidates, I suppose, try it. There's a number of different ways that you can gain some kind of teaching experience, albeit it might not necessarily be exactly the same as being in a classroom day in, day out. But there are a number of roles that you could take on, tutoring, which could give you an insight. There are a number of related or sort of partner activities that you could do, whether that's training a football team, it's taking some extracurricular classes, supporting in schools. Some of our network have gone through that route. Action Tutoring is a wonderful organisation we do a lot of partnership work with, and people try out that piece. There's also some really interesting sort of jobs within schools that you could do on a voluntary basis. A lot of our now teachers have had some experience as being governors and getting some kind of insight into schools. There are schools experience days and internships that you can apply for. So I think my suggestion in terms of how do you know that teaching is right for you is I suppose threefold. It's to talk to people that maybe are in the classroom, understand how that might apply. Is to try it out for yourself as much as you can in interrelated disciplines, and then if you can get that experience in the schools, and we can support and put you in the right direction to make that happen. Lucy, I'm hoping your voice is suitably recovered for another question, but we've got a lovely question here around how it feels being an older person starting out working in a school when other trainees are much younger.
Never mind other trainees being much younger. It's quite normal if you're as old as I am to find that your boss is younger than your own children. So yes, you're absolutely right. This is a thing. But for me, it's been an entirely positive one. I love the fact that I have friends in my who are in their 20s. That just makes life so much funnier and better. I also really like this strange role that I'm in. I'm kind of the experienced one, but I'm also the most junior. So that's just a really interesting situation to be in. And also, because I have been around the block a few times, I could really help my young colleagues with sort of how to deal with office management and how to manage their workload and what work they should just say, sod it, I've been working really hard today. I need to go home now. And I would be like there, like the shop steward saying, come on, everyone out. We've all done enough work now, let's go home. And that's just sort of really, really lovely. I don't think there has been a single time where I felt that my age with my colleagues was a problem, except possibly with the very senior people who kind of potentially find it tricky when they have someone who's in a junior position, but who's also super confident. But then that's on you to kind of put a sock in it a bit until you're fully trained, because you will just alienate your bosses if you start saying, oh, you should be doing this, that, and the other, when you still don't know how to teach. So you just have to be a little bit careful at the beginning. But overall, it's massively positive.
Wonderful. Thanks, Lucy. I'm going to take another question and then maybe throw one back to you if that's all right. Some interest in part-time training and part-time teaching roles. So yeah, if I talk to those a little bit, part-time training and part-time teaching roles are becoming more common, but they're not the norm, I suppose. But the teaching workforce and the teaching training landscape is adopting and adapting to the needs of people that want to get into the profession and how they can best find the right people and adjust their working practices to retain them. I think it's worth what I would recommend working this through with a career change specialist at Now Teach. But there are other considerations when it comes to training part-time. Tends to be the finances are then spread across 2 years, which might mean you need a couple of loans. It might mean that the finances don't necessarily stretch quite as far as you would necessarily like if you were doing it in a year. There's also something about the intensity of the learning curve if you are to do it in a year. Some of our trainees that have done part-time have thrived under it, but others have found that the challenge is that they don't necessarily get to grips with the teaching and the practical aspects as quick as others, and that can be quite difficult if you're stretching it out. That said, part-time is relatively it's becoming more and more common, and we would absolutely, and we certainly do advocate for the schools and the training providers that we work with. I mentioned Charles earlier, a Spanish teacher. He works part-time teaching Spanish in Suffolk. I think his journey, he taught full-time and then was able to work through with his leadership as how he could manage his role on a part-time basis. So I think if you look at it across the course of your journey in terms of how you get there and where you get to, there are certainly options for part-time, but it might not necessarily be the option that you immediately go to. Lucy, we've got another question that's come here that I think is quite an interesting one and is relatively topical, given some of the television programs that we've seen recently, and certainly around schools and activities in the classroom. But just would you be able to share briefly some of your experiences about behaviour management and how you've found that in the schools that you've taught in?
Yeah, this is such a great question, and it's something that every teacher thinks about and hopes that they will never be in the situation of some of those awful telly programs that Rob's referred to. The single most important thing is that every school will have a behaviour management system, which as a teacher, you have to follow. So you're not out there on your own, fighting 30 disruptive, potentially violent kids who are throwing desks and lighting fires, thank goodness, because I don't think I would have dealt with that well at all. You are in a school system, and whatever their behaviour thing is, you must follow it. And if you follow it, you get the support of the senior leaders. But that said, different schools are very, very different. I've worked in quite a few with very different policies. The first one, the one that I trained in, was Mossbourne in East London, which has some of the strictest behaviour in the country, with the result that I was the person who was normally in trouble for having inadvertently broken the teacher rules. It also meant that the students were kind of silent, moving from one lesson to another, but that the senior teachers would be watching me to make sure I was enforcing all the rules all the time. So that was, in a way, much less stressful because there was no bad behavior from the students, but it was equally quite stressful for me because I was up against it. Then I've taught in schools where it's much more freewheeling. And in those, although the school does support you, they allow a bit more kind of answering back and low-level disruption. And you just become better at dealing with it in time. And it's just tricky at first when you're not confident in your teaching or in your subject, to really get the respect of the kids. And so it does take time, but it absolutely does come. And so long as the school has some rules in place, and so long as you are really showing the students you care about them, I think that is the most. I don't want to sound too soppy, because I also think we should punish kids who really persistently misbehave. But I think for me, students, most of them would behave because they knew that I had something that I cared about, that I was trying to teach them because I cared about them. That said, though, I mean, I have had a few terrible water pistol moments, and there are a few moments when you just think, my God, I'm out of control here. This is absolutely awful. But I'm proud to say that in 7 years, I've never cried. So there you go.
Thank you, Lucy. Much appreciated. Um, I'll come back to another question in a few moments, but there's some really interesting thoughts in the chat around age. So I just thought I'd build into that a little bit. The average age of our cohort in 2025 was just under 49 years old. So on average, our teachers are in around that kind of 45 to 55 age group. I think our oldest now teacher I say retired, has left the classroom full time, but is still within a teaching capacity into his mid-70s. This year we did have a really lovely gentleman from Norfolk who changed career a number of times, but most recently was a driving instructor and found a passion for supporting young people by teaching them to drive. He's retrained and he's going through training now. Or actually, no, he's been to his first ECT place, I think, and he was 66. The other side, our youngest now teaches probably 34, I think was our youngest this year. We're really looking for people that have got professional experience or life experience, and we would help you navigate and unlock that within the classroom. So I don't think age is a barrier in any way, shape, or form. It is slightly different. I think it's fair to say that the teaching workforce is younger. The more traditional route to get into teaching is straight from university, straight into PGC, and straight into schools. But we absolutely believe, and increasingly we feel that we're having an impact on the sector, that people with professional and life experience can make a real impact in the classroom, and having that diversity of background and thought is incredibly important. As I mentioned, my eldest has got a career changer as one of her teachers, and they bring some wonderful real life experiences to make the lessons so contextual and helpful for her. So absolutely, there's space for there's support we can provide, and we're working with training providers to ensure that they're as welcoming and opening to people from all kinds of different backgrounds as possible. Lucy, I've got a relatively indulgent question that I'd like to ask you, if that's all right, and then I'll maybe go in a little bit more to some of the other questions in there. But I think what's the most wonderful thing about, I think, firstly being a teacher, but also the Now Teach network?
Okay, so I've touched slightly on the most wonderful thing about being a teacher. And it is this business of teaching kids things that they didn't, already know, and you feel useful every day. But there was one moment that stands out for me. I taught this very, very naughty boy in year 9. He was really, Yeah, he didn't, he was very lazy. Also, by the way, in most schools, you're not allowed to say either naughty or lazy, but we're not in a classroom at the minute, so I can say them freely. But anyway, he was both of those things. And one day, this was in an economics lesson, I told them what investment banks were, and I mentioned how much investment bankers got paid. And this guy came up to me at the end of the lesson and said, Miss, how do I become an investment banker? And I said, well, you have got to sort yourself out completely. You need to get a 9 in your economics GCSE. You need to get A's and A stars at A level. You need to go to a top Russell Group university. You need to be really on it finding work experience. But all that said, you are incredibly articulate and smart. And if you want to do this, I just think you would be amazing. And I will support you all the way. Anyway, absolutely dinner transformation. And he did get a 9 in his GCSE. Alas, I can't report the rest because my school didn't offer A levels. So he went on somewhere else. But I kind of thought I didn't become a teacher to swell the banks of investment bankers. But if this boy who was a free school meals kid, if he gets a job at Goldman Sachs one day, I'll feel my entire life was worthwhile. So there we go. The best thing about Now Teach is definitely the network. Definitely. We were famous in the early days for serving warm Prosecco and cold pizza. And why do people turn up for such horrible things? Well, because they really wanted to be with each other. And one of the people in that first year said that it was the first time since university that she'd had a gang. And it does feel like that. And it's blinking great.
And I maybe indulgent me to say so, but I'd love being able to work for such an organisation that's got so many of those people and so many of those stories that we can relay and hopefully amplify to encourage others to take that journey and become part of that network. Lucy, I just wanted to say thank you so much for this evening. Carrying on with your croaky throat, you've been incredibly informative and incredibly persuasive as ever.
Well, I'm going to be super keen, Rob, and I can just see one question on my screen that I'd like to weigh in on.
Please
You can
do.
talk about it, but it's about a lot of people very understandably think, oh God, I haven't actually had anything to do with my subject since university or since A level, and will I be a bit rusty? Rob, you can talk about the practical side of that, but I just want to say one thing, which is all you need to do is be one lesson ahead of your students. That's it. And often as teachers, you're made to teach subjects that you don't know anything about at all. And being one lesson ahead, once you know how to teach, it's not that hard. You can definitely do it. Anyway, Rob, you'll give a better answer to that. But I am going to go and have some lemsip. But thank you to everybody for coming. I really hope to meet some of you when you are beginning as trainee teachers.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Lucy. Take care of yourself. Have a lovely evening. Thank you. Just building on Lucy's response there. One of the things that we find surveying our Now teachers about why they want to go back into the classroom, there tends to be three reasons. There seems to be something around their experience, their professional experience, and being able to leave that legacy, pass that on to the next generation, and that kind of interaction with young people and that support. But secondly, and to Lucy's point, it's around reacquainting yourself with the subject that maybe you were passionate about and you really enjoyed when you were younger. And the curriculum does develop, and there are nuances to it and different ways that it's portrayed and how you can build on it. So training providers will have a number of different resources you can use. There will be subject knowledge enhancement courses that you can go through, and we can work through with you about how best to upskill or reacquaint yourself with that subject. And for so many of our Now teachers, that's such a lovely approach and a lovely thing to be able to do, to go back to where they were. For me personally, I'm not, I haven't taught, but I will be a now teacher at some point, and getting stuck into a history text and being able to take that into a classroom is something that I aspire to do one day. But I'd like to be able to get another few thousand of you guys into the classroom before I do so. That brings us really nicely, I think, to the last few slides of the webinar. We have some with a feedback poll that we would just like to flick up before we close. We'd lovely to get your thoughts, lovely to get your feedback. Great that we can start to tailor this again to you going forward. So please do take a few moments to complete that. That would be much appreciated. I bet to close, I'd just like to summarize in becoming a great secondary school teacher with Now Teach. It involves 4 different things. We'll give you free expert advice. We're a charity. We're funded by a number of different wonderful trusts and philanthropists that see real value in our work. We're able to offer you that free expert advice to apply for teacher training. We're the only career change experts in the market at the moment. We'd really love to help you with that. We'll provide 2 years of personalised career change support through your training and ECT. Excuse me, sorry, it's catching, isn't it? And then a lifetime membership to a national network of career changes, Lucy included, but many others up and down the country. And we would love to support you making an impact on young people's lives with your previous experience. The way to go about that, for those of you that haven't already, is just to register on our website. Complete an expression of interest. It's very small, quick, very easy to do, but please do so. Excuse me, it's catching. My apologies. But yeah, please do complete the expression of interest. We'll then be able to have a one-to-one conversation, work out how we can support you in your journey to become a secondary school Now teacher. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for your time this evening. I wish you a lovely evening. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Lucy. I hope we're able to address some of your questions, but please do make sure you EI and we will be able to answer any more going forward. Enjoy the rest of your evenings, and thank you so much for coming along. Goodbye.